Hey guys, Jordan here, welcome back. Today in part 2 of our Amazing Compact Bench build, we are going to, among other things, find a home for this guy. Would I love to have a miter saw wall? Sure would, I bet you would too. I don't have the space for it. So in a compact bench, we're gonna build a way to have a folding shelf on the back where this can move and then go onto when it's being used. We're also gonna make material supports. We're gonna make an adjustable shelf for all your power tools. We are going to do dust collection for the table saw. And then finally, we're gonna use one of my favorite things in the shop, the magic tent, to help make 2 simple boxes, one of which can hold table saw parts, and the other one will go right under it to catch any other dust that doesn't get vacuumed out. So we have a lot to do. Let's get to it.
First things first, we're going to attach this big old Stanley power strip under the lip of the work surface. Ultimately, we will have our router and table saw permanently plugged in, and then there's plenty of other outlets for our miter saw and any tools that we have on our utility shelf. Now we just need to plug in one cord to power the whole bench. Also, it's important to have that in first so you can make sure that your heavy-duty brackets are low enough so that your shelf doesn't interfere with it. So I'm laying those out and screwing them directly to the 2x4s, and these are rated for over 600 pounds, so we should be all good. I'm putting a slight round over on both sides of the shelf, just to make it easier to grip. And then we're gonna set it on the brackets, but not attach it. So we wanna set the miter saw on there and make sure that it's in the right position. Part of my design for this whole thing is that my miter saw is really light, so it's easy to pick up and move. If yours is heavy, you might have a harder time with that. So anyway, make sure it's spaced out enough that it can swivel. And then off camera, I drilled a hole straight down on 2 of the corners through the shelf. And then I can drop these bolts in there just to kind of secure it, and that keeps it from wiggling around. And now that we know that it's in the right spot and can clear the back of the bench, I have fixed the shelf to the brackets by drilling screws in from below. And here I'm just double checking that I left myself enough room to the right side of where the miter saw sits for a notch for the hose that's used for the router fence for the dust collection. And I did leave enough room, so I'm just tracing it out and I'll cut it later. Now I'll give an inaugural test, see how easy this thing is to break down. Pretty good, little stiff, but that'll work out. And folds out really easily. Success! Now that it's in place, I want to reinforce it so it doesn't bow in the middle under the weight of the miter saw. So I took this 2x4 and ripped it to the same depth as the brackets so that it can fold. And I'm just drilling it from the top and attaching with a bunch of screws. And this will just help keep it a little more stable. And I think we can call the miter shelf officially done. I had some homemade stop blocks before, but they were a little bulky, so I wanted to try and come up with something a little slimmer and easy to store. But I have nothing in mind. So let's see how my brain works. Ooh, let's also see if we can tell the difference between my drawings and a 5-year-old's. Here we go. This is literally what I'm thinking. I'm like, what if it was a square? A long square. Yeah, okay, yep. Probably took me 15 minutes to come up with the idea of a rectangle. But what a handy rectangle it's going to be. Cut down my pieces, enough for 2 stops. And then the only trick is just making sure that it's the exact same dimensions on 2 of the sides. And you'll see why in a second. Oh, and you want to make these the height of your miter saw table. That's really important, because these are a stop block and a material support, so you need it to be the exact same height for long pieces. And yes, I'm cheating. This was done out of order, so I did have the router in at this point, even though we haven't gone over that yet. So I'm rounding off all the edges and burning my logo on it in the likely event that some hooligan will try to steal my precious rectangles. They're kind of ugly, but to use, all you got to do is set it down and put an A-clamp on it. And these should be the exact same height as the table, so when I lay out a board, boom. And then sort of the idea of that longer side is you use it as a stop block. Flip it over, and now you can do repeat cuts really easily. Part 3. If you watched the first part of my bench build series, then you saw the utility shelf that I had on my old bench, and it worked great, so great that I'm just going to take it and the shelf that's already built and put it onto this bench. So basically you take your two shelf brackets, they don't need to be a specific width, they just need to be the same width on top and bottom. I'm not going to rebuild it, I'm going to try to find a link to the original article from Family Handyman. But the gist of it is you take one of these double brackets, and then you take one of these single brackets, cut off the end, and attach them together using 80s video magic. Joking, you use rivets. Rivets is what holds them together, and they're really easy to put in. I had never used them before. It was super simple and cheap. And what this does is this allows you to hang it vertically for sleek storage, and then you pop it out and put it the other way, whatever height you want. I'm going to drill a few more holes though in the brackets just to secure it a little better than I had it before. The shelf itself is just a simple piece of beaten up MDF with a French cleat on one side and a French cleat on the other side. And then make a series of shelves that are sized to fit in between those cleats that allow you to mount whatever you might want to on them. For example, a Craig jig, or I have also my sanders mounted to one of those shelves. I have a vise that's mounted to one of those shelves. Basically any tool that you would normally need to clamp down. And now all you have to do is just slide it in between the two French cleats. And then I have a hole drilled through both parts that I can just drop a bolt in, and that keeps them from wiggling anywhere. Pretty handy. Before you permanently attach the utility shelf to the brackets, put the brackets down, set the shelf on it, and make sure you have enough clearance between the back of the shelf and the bench itself. Because when you put the shelf in, you have to tilt it really high. And if you have it too close to the bench, then you're not going to have enough room to wiggle it in there. So I'm testing to make sure it goes in easily. Anywhere I put it, looks good. I can hang it, moving on. And to store those bolts I talked about, right next to it, in the 2x4, I'm going to drill 2 pilot holes and then 2 bigger holes that are a slightly larger diameter than the bolts at a diagonal angle. And then you have a fun way of storing them, and actually they're really easy to grab and reach whenever you're working on the utility shelf. It's actually pretty convenient. Part 4. I use the Rockler Dust-Right system, which I really like. So I'm using the 4-inch Dust-Right combo on the back, and then I'm going to jam this 2.5-inch reducer into it to go to the table saw. And all you need is a hole saw and a little piece of hose, and it's good to go. A lot simpler than I thought it was going to be by a long shot. So this doesn't come with holes, so I'm drilling some in. And then I'm going to pop off the access panel on one side and hold the hose to just kind of get a good guess of where it needs to come out on the other access panel. And then I'm going to mark where to drill, and I'm putting a pilot hole and then using a 4-inch hole saw to make a nice clean hole right through there. Then we're going to attach our Dust-Right combo port with some washers and screws. And flip it over and jam the 2.5-inch hose reducer into it. And it's a friction fit. This was a happy accident. I just discovered that by pushing really hard, it makes a great fit. Unfortunately, the camera didn't capture it, but I took a mallet and beat it extra hard for good measure. It's not going anywhere. So I'm going to reattach that access panel. And then this is on the inside, and I fit my hose over it, clamp it down, and attach the hose to the back port of the table saw. And here you can see where that hole that we cut in the tabletop in part 1 of this build comes into play. Moving the saw from 0 to 45 degrees, this gives us enough room so that the hose doesn't get snagged. Works great. Put the panel back in place, screw it in, and Apprentice 2 and I will now take some time to give the garage a much needed cleaning, so we can move on to part 5. Now we're going to make the 2 boxes that fit underneath the table saw. The top one of which is a drawer, essentially, that catches a lot of excess sawdust that falls beneath the table saw, that hole that we made. And then somehow I forgot to shoot this, I apologize. But I ran a groove along each one of these pieces on the bottom to hold the bottom piece of plywood in place. So I drew out a little handle, and then I'm just at the bandsaw, cutting that one out for the top drawer. And then the bottom drawer is deeper, so I did something similar, but we're gonna use our drill press to create a handle with a top on it. And to smooth those out, I do not own a spindle sander, but I have this kind of cheap kit that goes in a drill press, and it works pretty well for something like this. I'm not crazy about it, but you know, gets the job done. Now I'm going to dry fit them just to make sure all the pieces line up before I permanently attach anything. And then I can take them apart and do a round over on everything. Particularly drawer handles, I always like the way that feels a lot better. And to assemble the boxes, I'm just going to put glue in the grooves and a little bit on the sides. And then put them together using some brad nails. No need to even clamp. These are just real simple shop boxes. Nice. And now I'm going to paint them, but I'm going to use a special technique you might not be familiar with. This is the magic tent. So I'm going to use my April Wilkinson inspired fold down assembly table. Ooh, magic time. I like this. So I take this black disc, look at this, nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve, and using only a bit of natural talent. Oh, amazing. Take a bow. Yes, you deserve it. Take another bow. Handsome devil. Anyway, put your item in the magic tent, hit the switch, and it turns it whatever color you like. Super convenient. And now we have our two boxes. Perfect. And since we have Magic 10 out, we might as well use it to put a red logo on one of the doors that we have cut but not installed yet. We'll use a cereal box stencil and some old plans. That's what they're good for. Let's see how Magic 10 did. Remove our stencil. Ah, so clean.
What a great investment. I was in a shop recently that didn't have one and they had to paint everything by hand. It was sad. Great job today though. We covered a lot. Next time in video 3, we're gonna do router palooza. We're gonna do the router table. We're gonna do an enclosure to keep all that dust in, and then we'll do some dust collection to suck it on out. We'll do some doors to hide all your junk, and that'll cover it. So that's a lot right there. So that's video 3. I hope you check it out. Thank you so much for watching this one. If you have ideas, if you know better ways to do things, please put it in the comments below. I would love to know. And if you like the music, check that out as well. Quasar wut-wut, very polite band. Thank you so much. See you next time. And remember, if I can do it, you can absolutely do it. Thanks.